Hey, how are you? He's not here, right? Sorry. You okay? You good with that? Okay. Are you good with that? Yeah. Meeting. Oh, that was nice. Good evening. I welcome you to the regular Town Council meeting of the Town of Sunnyvale for today, April 8th, 2019. This is the first meeting of the Town Council for the month of April. We appreciate you being here tonight. Please join me standing for the invocation to be given by Council Member Finch.
Let's pray. Father, we thank you so much for the blessings, many blessings you've given us. We thank you for this beautiful day that you've blessed us with. We thank you for a wonderful town. Father, with so many great attributes about this town that make us all thankful to live here. Father, I pray for the council as we deliberate and consider the business of the town. Could you give us wisdom and direction as we make these decisions? I thank you for the honor to be able to serve our great citizens. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Please stand me and join as we pledge allegiance to our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated. Let me call to order the regular Town Council meeting of the Town of Sunnyvale. Now time is 7:02 p.m. For the record, all 6 council members are present, so we have a quorum. If you are here to participate in tonight's discussion by addressing the council in the public forum or at any other time, can you please take a moment to sign in or fill out the login sheet? There is a login sheet right outside the door so that we can keep record of who spoke to the council and we can accurately spell your name and your details. And we won't use that for our official minutes. Now this is the time for public forum. Citizens may speak on any matter other than personal matters or litigation. No town council member actions or discussion will be taken. At this time, if you would like to come and speak to the council, please come forward.
Good evening. My name is Emery Powell, 109 Sunbird Lane. I'd like to thank each of you for your willingness to serve on the council and for the sacrifice of your personal time. It takes a lot of effort and it's very much appreciated. Thank you. I have to withdraw from the campaign for town council, for which I'm currently a candidate. And I'd like to do that publicly so everybody knows that they're still able to vote for me, I guess, because my name cannot be pulled off of the ballot at this particular point in time. But I think in all good conscience, people should know that at this particular point in time, looking forward, I will not have the ability to fulfill the responsibilities of a councilman. So in good conscience, I need to make the public aware. I would like to just say a few things with regards to why I'm withdrawing and express my regrets that I need to do that because I've got some passion for the work that's going on in the town, and While I'd agree with this council on most issues, I have opposed some of the resolutions and some of the measures that the council's taken, particularly when I feel that they may be violating our constitutional principles of this country and personal rights. I've ran for council last year and this year because I wanted to have a little more conservative voice on the council. I felt that there was a need to have more direct representation of individual interest, while the council sometimes takes more of a perspective of what's needed for the town as a whole. But it's with regret that I withdraw my candidacy. But we just got back not too long ago, almost a year ago, from a mission in Africa. And our church has asked us to consider another mission, which will take us away from Sunnyvale for a couple of years, serving in a small town, helping to do the Lord's work in a little town just east of Jackson, Mississippi, which we've agreed to do for a couple of years. Although we may be coming back and forth a little bit, we will be there for the most part, and therefore not able to fulfill my responsibilities if elected as a council member. Overall, I feel this council is doing a wonderful job. It's a good work. I encourage you to press on, and may the Lord bless you in that work and this town. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Powell, and we wish you all that is best for you and your wife.
Thank you.
Anyone else? If not, I'm going to ask Councilmember Finch to stand up and recognize a few of our men of this town who done some marvelous things.
So thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council. Just wanted to bring to your attention, I know everybody's aware, last weekend we had at the school, I see Superintendent Williams here as well, had a water leak, a major event there, and so our fire department was able to play a role in that. And so, our firefighters serve us all the time, but in this role, there was a substantial amount of water in the school, and we needed a way to sweep that water out in some way. And so Doug and several town members were there, and I think we made the call to the fire department, and they graciously showed up, not only provided us with some squeegees and equipment, but stayed there and helped us sweep out hundreds of gallons of water, I believe, Doug. There was a lot of water. There's a waterfall. I have a video of a waterfall in the school. But anyway, it was great. So I'd just like to take a moment to recognize a few of the firefighters that were there that provided assistance to us. Scott Y'all, I think, are they here? All right, stand up, raise your hand. I want to make sure we get you. Thank you very much. Roberto Perez. Mr. Perez here. Yes, thank you. Matt Province. And Brady Miller. I don't know if they're here or not. So I just wanted to publicly recognize them, Mr. Mayor, and say thank you as a citizen. It was great. And Doug, I don't know if you have anything else. Doug always likes to talk, so I don't know if he has anything else he wants to say. So Doug, I know I'm putting you on the spot. So.
They did a great job. I will tell you that we had very little damage, property damage, and I attribute that to the job these men and a number of our community volunteers did. It was actually a fun day. I got to throw a little bit of water on my head. I sure appreciate their efforts. It was greatly appreciated.
So Doug, I'd love to have the firefighters come up here and take a picture with everybody. So if you guys wouldn't mind coming forward so we can get a picture with everybody.
Mr. Williams, will you come forward?
Come on up, Doug.
I did.
Thank you guys.
Thank you, gentlemen. Anyone else would like to come forward? Okay, if not, before I wrap up the public forum, I want to wish all the Texas fan out there, guns up. Right, okay, so I'm going to close the public forum. Moving on to the consent agenda items. Council, we have one item on the consent agenda, that is consider approval of minutes of the regular meeting of the Town Council for March 26, 2019. Would anyone like to remove any other items or any discussions on this item? If there are no discussions, I'm going to call for a motion to approve consent agenda item 1 as presented.
Motion to approve.
Motion made by Mr. Finch to approve the consent agenda item 1.
Second.
And seconded by Mr. Allen to approve as presented. Everyone heard the motion? All in favor signify. All opposed? Motion passed 6-0. Moving on to the public hearing portion of the agenda. Number 2, hold a public hearing, discuss and consider and act upon the first reading of Ordinance 19-10 and Ordinance amending Ordinance 18-16, which made appropriations for the support of the Town of Sunnyvale for the fiscal year beginning October 1, 2018 and ending September 30, 2019, and amending the annual budget of the Town of Sunnyvale for the 2018-2019 fiscal year. Ms. Hopkins?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm going to go through these slides with you. If you'll go to the next slide. We'll begin with the general fund. On the general fund, we increase its revenues by $318,000. The majority of that is we raised the sales tax by 15% based on the trend. We also decreased property taxes due to ceilings and protests. Building permits, we raised $85,000 due to our building activity. Ambulance billing, and I have to give credit to Chief Kendrick because he is the one that really got this going by recommending a new vendor, and our ambulance billing revenues have almost doubled. Other revenues, those are non-reoccurring items, and we just trued those numbers up. Interest expense, or interest earned, and I have to give credit to Phyllis for that. She watches our cash flow, makes sure we don't have too much money in non-interest-bearing accounts. Then on the expense side, we decreased some line items by reprioritizing and adjusting individual line items. So all of those changes resulted in a net increase to fund balance of approximately $335,000, or a fund balance total of 207 operating days. And if you turn that into dollars, it's approximately $1,490,000. Do you want me to just keep going, or you want to ask questions as we go?
Council, I think if you have questions, actually go forward. Actually go through it, let's ask the questions.
The next fund that we're looking at is the Road Impact Fund. This fund, we increased the revenues $350,000, and it's due to those 4 large projects listed there. The Road Impact Fund could also provide additional funding for our Collins Road gap in funding. And that's the next slide. And the next one. This is the remaining cost and funding of the project. I've outlined there all of the costs. We've already paid for the right-of-way. The council approved 2 additional initiatives in this project. One was material testing. The other one was a utility relocate. So the total cost for that project without the right-of-way is $8,583,000. The sources of funding for this project is the Series 2017 COs that we issued, Dallas County participation, which is currently confirmed, again, impact fee and Stony Creek mitigation fees, and we still have an unfunded balance for this project of about $372,000. Next slide. So how do we close that gap? One way we close that gap is we have increased funding from Dallas County, and that has been requested. Lyle is here, I believe, if you have any questions regarding the status of that. If the general fund was used to fund this gap, it would cost about 22 days of reserves.
Liz, how much did we ask Dallas County to help us with? Was there a dollar figure put on it? Or
Yes.
is it only going to be a
I think
percentage?
there's a chart for that. What chart number is that?
Yeah, it's actually about $1.2 million, correct, Lau? And that was really based upon what the bids came back at, and they went through and told us what things they were not able to participate in, and then from there, took a percentage, and so the amount that is going to our commissioner is $1.2 million. So should we get those funds, then it does take the need to use any general fund reserve money out of the equation, and we'd be relying upon our traffic impact project funds. So, that's a much better scenario, but we wanted to present what kind of is the worst-case scenario from a budgetary standpoint. This contract will come to you next meeting for award, and so we're hoping we hear from the county before that, but if not, we will be in a position of needing to move forward and then waiting to see what the response is.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to the next funds. These are the EDCs. Again, because of the sales tax trend, we made the decision to recommend an increase to the sales tax receipts and the interest earned. The increase in expenses are incentives. Tracy is here if you have any specific questions regarding those incentives. If all of those incentives are paid, that will leave the 4A with approximately $1,951,000.
Let's just give me a second, okay? I just want to make an announcement that there was a power outage and the streaming is not working quite. The TVs, okay, sorry. Streaming is working okay? The TVs are not working. They are trying to fix that.
On to the 4B, the same scenario here. We increased the sales taxes. Would you go to the next slide for me? We increased the sales taxes and the interest earned, and then added the initiatives. And their fund balance, should all of those initiatives be paid, will be about $2 million. The Water Revenue Fund had some small changes in it. When we adopted the budget, we did not have the final numbers from North Texas Municipal Water District, so we're adding that in for the pre-treatment of our water and also increasing interest earned. So that's going to be about $31,000 to the Water Fund's working capital, and the Water Fund usually runs about $2 million in working capital. The next fund is the debt service fund. This is your INS rate. Again, here we reduced the property taxes due to protests and ceilings, and we increased the interest earned. So it cost this fund approximately $6,638. And those pictures there are the things that are funded with debt service: the water tower, this building, the service center, the DSO. Water and Sewer Impact Fund, there was no changes to these funds. The PEG capital account, we discontinued this account a couple of budget cycles ago. This is if the municipality has a cable channel, and we do not have a cable channel. So it was the decision of council to ask the cable companies to stop charging the residents that fee because we were not making use of it. We are now guardians of about $68,000 that's in this account, and if the law ever changes and allows us to do something different with this money, or there is a mechanism to get this money returned, at this point there is not. So this fund had no changes. The Special Revenue Fund, this fund has some mandatory things in it. One that's the gavel there, what that represents is every time someone pays a citation, there's a portion of money pulled out for court technology and court security. It's very restricted what you can do with that money, what you can pay for with that money, and it is dictated by state law. Also, sometimes we have donations, our bike patrol being a big one. We put that donation in the Special Revenue Fund, not because we had to, but because we felt it needed to be isolated and it needed to be used for one specific purpose. We also occasionally get donations for Sunnyfest, and we also put those donations there so we know that they're not mingled with the general fund. Same with animal control. If Frank gets donations, we put it in the Special Revenue Fund, just so we know where it is, what it is, and why it is. And there were no changes to this fund. Homestead Amenities is a fund that is dictated by ordinance. There's no changes to this fund either. The next slide is the details. If you look at the next slide, if there's any piece in this that I think tells the whole story, it would be this page. This page has every one of your funds, the changes in revenues and expenses, and the net increase or decrease. And then I gave you some commentary, and I hope that I covered the majority of what is written there this evening. And then if you keep going, you start seeing the numbers. So there you go. This is all the detail. This tells you where I got the operating days. This is where I got the net position, fund balances. This is the weeds. And it's all there on all the funds. And I'll be glad to answer any questions. Gretchen is here tonight too. She is an integral part of the finance group, so if I can't answer it, she probably can.
Council, any questions for staff?
Mayor, I had a few questions that were previously answered, and I think just for the benefit of our town and those that are listening, could you clarify or maybe just reassure the town as to where we are? There were no real unexpected or expected events that made our budget fluctuate.
No, we adopted our budget on September 10th of 2018, and it's been a practice of the town for budgetary reasons to go back and take a look and see that we're headed in the right direction. Or the one thing I didn't mention is we have two new initiatives in this mid-year. They're small. One of them is to get our GIS aerial photography updated. This not only helps the planning, but I think fire and the DSO can take advantage of that updated material because the streets are coming online, neighborhoods are changing. So that's one initiative we got in here. And the other one was some maintenance on town assets. This building is coming on 15 years old, and we want to take care of our assets. We're very fortunate to have them. So we put a little bit of that in there as well. But nothing, this is just more of a process that the town has adopted since I've been here. And sometimes, like last year, when our DSO contract went up so much, that would have been a biggie then. But I don't see anything here necessarily.
Thank you.
Council, additional questions or discussions on this topic? Okay, if not, it's a public hearing portion of the agenda, so I'm going to, if anyone would like to come and discuss this particular agenda item, please come forward. No one is coming forward. Council, are there additional discussions or questions on this agenda item? So let me turn over to David. David, we got to make a motion on this agenda item, correct? Even though it's the first reading, we make a motion.
Make a motion and approve it.
And if there are changes, we can make the changes. Then we come back again second time, and we make additional motion again.
Correct.
Okay.
If, yes,
What's that?
yes. If there's any changes, let's hear those first. See how.
Okay. Okay, if, council, if there are no discussions on this topic, can I have a motion with respect to ordinance 19-10?
Motion to approve.
Motion made by Mr. Finch to approve ordinance 19-10 and second by Mr. Egan. Everyone heard the motion? Additional discussions? If not, all in favor signify. All opposed, motion passed 6-0. Thank you, Ms. Hopkins. Moving on to agenda item number 3, that is to hold a public hearing to consider and act upon a request by Joe Duncan to approve a specific use designation for an establishment with alcoholic beverage sales use, Kearney's Feed Store, at or about 3602 North Bedline Road. Mr. Jackson?
Mayor, Town Council, not certain this mic is loud enough, but the applicant has submitted an application requesting a specific use designation. Last year, we made an amendment to our town code, our UDO, to require a specific use designation for on-premise alcohol sales. And the applicant is just following up with that procedure, getting a specific use designation for that use. The site plan approval was done last year. Applicant is getting close to completing his construction and building permit process. TABC has been notified and they've been out to the site as well. He is here to answer any questions, but town staff recommends approval.
Mr. Jackson, I have one question though. On page, the next page, section E, there's a question about traffic. It says the restaurant traffic flow on the site will be adequately managed and there will be ingress, egress, both on Bedline and Town East Boulevard. So when you said traffic will be managed, you basically be talking about the
Just the
in and
existing-
out?
Yeah, just the existing conditions should handle the traffic for the restaurant. Now, keep in mind, that was a concern when it was originally approved, but town council felt that if it became an issue, we would address it at that time, but we don't foresee it being a major issue, though. There will be traffic at that location, though. We hope that it will be. So, we'll see.
Okay. Council, question for staff. I know the applicant is here, so would you like to come forward? Council, question for the applicant.
Not related to the SUD, but what's the estimated completion date, Mr. Duncan?
30 days to open? Excellent, thank you. Additional questions? Okay, again, this is a public hearing agenda, so if anyone from the audience would like to come and discuss this topic, please come forward. No one is coming forward, so I am going to close the public hearing. Council, are there additional discussions on this agenda item? If not, can I have a motion with respect to the application from Joe Duncan to approve a specific use designation for the establishment with alcoholic beverage sales use at or about 3602 North Bedline Road?
So moved to approve.
Motion made by Mr. Egan to approve the motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Clark to approve the application from Mr. Duncan for the special use designation. Everyone heard the motion? Are there additional discussions? All in favor signify. All opposed, motion passed 6-0. Congratulations, Mr. Duncan. Moving on to item number 4, that is to hold a public hearing, discuss and consider and act upon the first reading of the Sunnyvale Center Truck Service and Park Plant Development Ordinance 19-11, PD-04. A request by David Jackson, the Jackson Company, to change the town zoning map from industrial to industrial plant development, Sunnyvale Center Truck Service and Park, at or about 326-330 Clare Road. Mr. Jackson?
Mayor, Town Council, the applicant has submitted a zone change request for Sunnyvale Truck Service and Park, a proposed truck and trailer maintenance facility with outdoor storage parking of 18-wheelers, construction equipment, and other large machinery, RVs as such. The planned development will consist of 12.4 acres, and it's located in Sunnyvale Industrial Park Center. The proposed development will consist of various uses requiring specific use designations and variations from the town code. It's for that reason that staff felt that it would be appropriate for the applicant to submit a PD, even though it is industrial uses, so he could cater the actual development accordingly for his proposed uses. Those proposed uses are heavy machinery sales, contractor storage yard, vehicle storage facility, and the applicant is also in their development standards, proposed development standards, proposing the use of aggregate, gravel, and crushed stone for the parking areas, recycled concrete and other stone like that. The fire lanes, however, will be reinforced concrete. Now, this is just in the parking area. There is a building outside that parking area, which is sitting on 1.1 acres right out front, which there'll be a maintenance building where they'll be allowed to do servicing of those trucks in that area. That building will be on, that parking area will be concrete. The building will have hours from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. during the week, and the yard, the storage area, will be gated and accessible by code 24 hours a day. With this, staff recommends approval of the proposed PD, and the P&Z recommended approval as well. And the applicant is here to answer any additional questions.
Council, questions for Mr. Jackson? Rashad Jackson, that is. And the applicant is here, so would you like to come forward? Good evening.
Good evening. I'm David Jackson. I'm the real estate broker on this transaction. I've had this property listed for 9 years. I'm ready to move it on. I live at 8216 Tangle Rose Drive in Frisco, Texas. I just spend a lot of time out here. Y'all give me the questions, I'll give you the answers.
Okay, so any questions for the applicant?
I guess my only real thought is, because it's going to be crushed, I would assume crushed concrete, rock and what have you, is dust control issues
Right.
or
And
concerns.
with certain types of products like caliche, or up here in North Texas, you call it white rock. I'm from South Texas. You know, that will break down and create dust. And one of the things that we visited with the town staff on and engineer and all is using a rock type product that will not break down and create dust. Because I was anticipating that, there'd be questions about dust, there'd be questions about the different things. There's two reasons we requested the aggregate type parking surface. Obviously the concrete drives, and you have that in your packet and all. Number one is cost. I mean, it's $200,000 an acre to do something in concrete that will handle trucks. And then secondly, is for, one of the things that was sort of a last minute throw in was equipment storage. This is primarily, the buyer of this track is Randy Timms of Western Flyers, who is already in Sunnyvale Center. He has a trucking company, and his client is Marazzi Tile. His company will use probably 30 or so % of this, basically storing trailers for Marazzi Tile and taking care of their needs. The rest of the land will be open for leasing to either that over-the-road driver who is home and can't put his big rig in his neighborhood in Mesquite, so he'll, have his pickup parked there when he's on the road, and he'll put his 18-wheeler there when he's in town. And so it gives them a place to rent long-term that they can use over and over again and know they have a spot for their vehicle. There is a big demand for trailer storage in the Metroplex right now. I get calls for that occasionally. And so that was a piece of it. And then the equipment piece, tracked equipment like bulldozers, you can't put that on concrete or asphalt or it'll shred it. So we thought, there may be some heavy contractors that need places to store their equipment. And so that was the big motivations for going with the aggregate.
Well, thank you for the explanation. I guess my real concern, because I think what you're doing here is great. It's a perfect piece of land to do this on.
Thank you.
But I do also know that there's some other business in that immediate area that dust would be a real issue to them.
Yeah.
And I just want to be sure that we know that mitigation procedures will be put in place should dusting become, it's not like trucks are going 80 miles an hour down this road and
Sure.
creating that type of dust, and it's going to be kept minimal. I just want to be sure that if we do start seeing dust generated and you're taking the precautions that you can, but that there is a commitment by the buyer. At this point, you're not the buyer, but you're the seller. But that there's a commitment by the buyer that we're not having to get town involved with dealing with issues of dust as a result of that type of product being used. And maybe you get several 35-ton tractors coming in, and it breaks down the concrete a little bit more than what you had expected to pre-crushed concrete. So now you end up with the dusting issue, and I don't want to have to be the one that mediates again next door neighbor issues. So as long as if there's a way we can get a commitment, I'm not quite sure how that happens, but a way that we get a commitment that you're willing and or the buyer is willing to deal with mitigation issues of dust control, should that become something that impacts one or two of the adjoining neighbors. Because recognizing the south wind that we generally are under, it's going to be blowing kind of more over toward Ashton Drive, but it will kind of be blowing toward some of those businesses more easterly, but towards some of those businesses that could have a little more sensitivity to it. So that's really why I wanted you to speak to.
Okay. And I don't know the answer to this question, but have y'all had challenges with rail trucking? Because they have a caliche covered yard, which...
We haven't received any complaints. Now, there aren't any real people that are affected by their business because of their location. I think the same will be for here, the proposed location. I will say that the drives that will be traveled on will be concrete, so I think that'll help minimize any issues that we might have.
Mostly where the vehicles are parked on is where you're going to have the non-solid base, so to speak. But still, when they drive over it over a period of years, you're going to end up with some dusting. My next door neighbor put in the same thing in his driveway, which was to the side of my house. I'm very familiar with what the product is. In fact, you're probably going to get it from over off Lawson Road, because that's what they do. But it's just that eventually it does break down, and if you get a good southerly wind coming up, there could be dusting issues. Maybe it only happens one day in 365, but it screws up an adjoining company's product because of how clean that product has to be for what he's building. And I just want to be sure that it's clearly understood that those mitigation issues are going to be the responsibility of the buyers at the point in time. That's part of the reason why, as I understand it, and over the years that I've been a part of being up here, that we really like to see concrete out there. But we also understand there's an expense involved with that, particularly when you're talking about heavy trucks and construction equipment. And it just doesn't make sense to do it. But as long as the buyer recognizes that he's going to have to deal with that issue, I don't want to see him up here, and I don't want to see adjoining neighbors up here complaining to us because we passed it.
Yes, I understand what you're saying. One of the things that we are doing, and it was kind of one of the requests of one of the major members in Sunnyvale Center, John Rogers of Performance Pulsation Control, he said, I don't want to see a really messy looking truck yard over there. So if you notice in your package, we've got a line of photinias along that entire southern border. And over a little bit of time, those things will be as tall as the fences, and will create a bit of a windbreak in that process. I do hear your point. I don't know what a resolution would be.
I would say just watch it for now. We do have a means, as far as code enforcement is involved.
Okay.
To address the issue if it becomes a nuisance. But I think just occasionally washing it down, if it becomes a dust issue, then I think that'll resolve the problem.
Sure. And like I say, when my intention here was that, the town engineer would be involved in the design of this so that we design it with a product that would be at the lesser end of the
Right.
dust generation.
Minimal nuisance.
Because I recognize, to say, we want concrete, that costs $7 a square foot, I understand that, and I understand part of the reason is the potential for a dust thing. So I thought surely we can find a product that will break down a whole lot less than caliche will. Caliche's cheap, it's easy, it creates a bit of a hard packed surface, but it is continually producing dust. And so I was, we'll have them spend a little more money to get a product that will have less breakdown. And if you have enough trailers and trucks parked in there, they're going to block the wind themselves.
I appreciate your efforts, totally. This is a good plan. I actually got to thinking about 190 when it goes through, and it's going to be an even better location for this type of product, and it's back behind other buildings, and
It's the right place for
It's
this
a right
kind of
place.
use.
It's the right
Yes.
place.
Ms. Howard?
Go ahead, Ms. Wade.
I'm concerned about the heavy machinery. How much heavy machinery should we be expecting to go up and down potentially Clay Road? Clay Road is not held up very well,
Right.
considering the money we spent on it. Now we're putting heavy equipment on it, which has already got trucks, but now it's heavy equipment. How much is going to be heavy equipment?
Maybe none. That was one of the factors that we thought, let's look at, when you're trying to develop a property, and yes, the buyer's using a good portion of it, but there's more acreage there. And so we were looking at, what are the potential uses, and Rashad was, kind of instrumental in looking at the code and figuring out what things might fit in there. We're not really creating this as a storage yard for bulldozers, but when we say heavy machinery, and I think he even includes, RV storage in there, I think our primary use, and frankly, I've thought about if this guy doesn't follow through with buying it, that I might buy it and develop this kind of property. There's a big demand from truck drivers to have places to store trucks because they can't put them in their neighborhood. And they could go out, on the highway, 20 miles out at these, places and lease a spot. But to be able to have a place where they can put their 18-wheeler when they're in town. I've seen a place just like this in the mid-cities, and it was in a real hidden, kind of tucked away place. But those truck drivers have got to have a place to put their tractor trailer rigs. That's what I perceive, either tractor trailer rigs or just trailer storage like you see on the J-Rail site on Long Creek right now, is what I expect to be the majority of everything on this. You know, as far as heavy machinery, I mean, you know, you've got that water utility contractor right there on Aston Road at Clay that's got a, you know, all kinds of funky looking things stored back there. I don't foresee this being monster giant equipment that they're going to be hauling on a, you know, trailer at 3 a.m. in the morning to get it, you know, out of here with traffic. But, you know, we are just kind of utilizing that category in the code to describe, you know, machinery that we don't really know what it is. But I'm not foreseeing this beating the daylights out of your road. You know, I can't imagine somebody come along and saying, I got 80 bulldozers I need to, and a big, you know, lowboy, you know, trailer. But that is a piece of what it's for if someone comes along for that. I think most everything that comes in and out of there, I mean, maybe some of these trailers that are stored have product in them. I sort of doubt it. I think almost everything coming in and out of there will be empty. Just guessing. But I don't know, because it's sort of like saying I'm going to build a mini storage place, but I can't tell you what everybody's going to store in the mini storage place. It's a lack of mini storage, but it's for vehicles.
I have a couple questions for you real quick. I'll be honest with you, I'm not a big fan of storing trucks in gravel. This might be the right place. We have some Sunnyvale residents here that locally just built 2 or 3 of these, and they concreted the entire thing, and they look really nice. I get the money part, but I also get the business part too. But just a couple quick questions for you with regards to, one, will there, bugs flying around. Will there be people sleeping in their rigs in this property?
No. This is designed not for like your jet pilot out on the freeway where they'll come in and hook up their truck and hook up the air conditioning and power and they'll sleep in their rig overnight. This is for that truck driver who's living in Mesquite and he's dropping his tractor trailer off. So we're not having any facilities for a truck to have power or air conditioning supplied to it or anything like that.
So
And we could make it a rule, you know, that they, you know, there's no sleeping in your truck if it's stored on this lot.
I don't know that I'm opposed to that. I just want to know if that's going to happen and if we have an ordinance in place that addresses that if need be. I don't know. I just was curious. I know a lot of truck drivers do sleep in there. So I just want to know if that was going to be a part of the process. And Rashad may have to answer this, but with regards to the design standards for this PD, is there anything else that we're waiving that's unique?
Not that I'm aware of. We already allow for metal exterior in the industrial area, and noting that we made that amendment to lower that requirement since it's away from the right-of-way, that they don't necessarily have that requirement. They're also limited on the required landscaping as well, noting that they're interior to the site. Now they are putting in landscaping, so that'll help. But outside of that, the main variation is the SUD portion of the uses proposed, as well as the crushed granite or gravel, whatever he chooses, for the parking area.
Okay, thank you, Rashad. And quickly, I want to tag back into the last statement that you made with regards to Mr. Wade's comment. You said, correct me if I'm wrong, you indicated that there would be other storages and whatnot, like a mini storage. So my question is, are we storing trailers or are we storing whatnot here?
Well, this is, the primary design for this is to either store trailers or tractor trailers or heavy machinery like, you know, the tracked type machinery. But if somebody's got, you know, vehicles or, you know, RVs that they're willing to just store in the open like that, then, you know, we would consider that too. There's going to be a cost for each rental space, and you can store an RV but it'll be screened off from the park with the Fatinias. And the water plant is on one side, there's nobody over there looking, and There are some industrial buildings on the north side, like two, and then there's screening in the fence that's to the west. So basically, much of it will be screened off.
Okay, thank you.
So, and that brings up another question. So, we've gone from truck storage to heavy equipment to RVs. Can you store a boat there? I mean, are we opening this up to anybody who wants to store anything can store it?
You know, a lot of lots out there are designed for RV and boat storage, and was not the original intent of this. It's more industrial and for tractor trailers and stuff. You know, I hate to limit that out, but that is not our goal. And you know, like I say, the spaces will have a rent number on them, and you know, I'm not sure that your guy with a bass boat is going to want to pay that kind of money.
I don't
And
disagree.
I would ask
I'm
that that
just-
be added.
I'm
or
just
that exemption.
concerned that we're approving something that, under the guise of heavy equipment and trucks, and it's going to become a public storage facility, not enclosed with containers necessarily, but an RV, boat storage, extra vehicles, whatever. I'm concerned that we've digressed from trucks to personal use vehicles.
Now, you will
That
have
seems like another
personal,
category.
yeah, you will have personal use vehicles when that 18-wheeler driver is on the road. He'll park his car there or pickup truck in his spot while he's on the road. He's got to get to his truck. And that is what I saw in the mid-cities when I saw this facility that was similar to this. And actually, I showed it to Randy Timms and said, hey, we can build you one in Sunnyvale Center, you know, that'll be attached to the property you already own, and it's where you want to be. Because, like I say, his primary client is Marazzi, and that's what his big motivation is, to care for Marazzi's needs.
So do you feel like you would have an issue with restricting to no overnight idling, no overnight staying, and for 18-wheeler tractor trailer and/or trailer or tractor and heavy equipment only? Do you think you would have a problem with those restrictions? Restricting it to those scenarios?
Mm-hmm.
Now, I can understand, and maybe others on the council can understand, the swapping his truck for the tractor while he's out running. I think that can be all right because it won't start looking like a used car lot. But when you start, as Member Wade was saying, if we approve it like it is now without the restrictions in it, we can see it turning into, I kind of liken it to the rental place that the tornado hit over on Interstate 30 that had boats and RVs and whatnots and storage units and all that sort of stuff. And I you know, this is an industrial park, and I interpret all this to be industrial. Some good questions have been raised. So I just wrote down these 4 restrictions to restrict it to these 4 things, with the one inclusion that a tractor trailer owner could park his car there for the swap. Would that be an acceptable?
Okay, can you repeat?
Restrictions would be restricting it to no overnight idling or no idling of trucks. Although you do have to warm up, so I do understand that when you're coming to diesels.
No overnight.
No overnight stays, tractor trailer, 18-wheeler, or trailer only, or tractor only, and heavy equipment. Heavy equipment. RVs. I'm inclined to go away from the RVs. I would really, especially since you say that a majority of the business is going to be Marazzi.
One of the things that occurs to me is, and I'm trying to meet the needs of contractors, construction people, and they often have construction trailers, or sometimes they'll use an RV as their construction trailer. But they've got to have a place to store those kind of things, and it would seem to me that this is the perfect place to store a construction trailer between jobs.
I'm inclined to go with the construction trailer under that scenario and/or the RV under that scenario, because typically that type of trailer, RV is going to be a large one. But I'm not wanting to get into the small stuff.
But
Is
counsel-
what it boils down to.
Council,
Okay.
we start allowing RVs, then next thing you know, we've got the fifth wheel out there. And next thing you know, we're staying in it because we're between trips.
So-
And, the guy that doesn't live in Mesquite but needs a place to park his trailer or truck or
So,
vehicle.
right, so Rashad, quick question for you. Do we have anything in place right now that restricts use other than what he's designating this? Like, if you transition from a truck storage yard to what I hear is a more public storage type of thing, is there any additional regulations in the code already that regulate this for us?
No.
Okay.
Outside of the specific use designation requirement before that use is allowed, that's the only,
So if we approve this, everything we've talked about tonight that he's proposed would be allowed?
correct.
Okay.
Because he has, this is his own development standards for the specific property.
Okay.
From an enforcement standpoint, if construction trailers and construction RVs are allowed, it would be very hard for staff to decipher between someone who just has an RV and someone who has a construction RV.
I agree. And I think it's a good point that we don't want to get in the business of trying to delineate that ourselves. And the next question I have, I guess, for council is, I look at the map where this is, I look at his primary use, there's no real impact to any type of residential property. It's screened by other industrial properties. I see this as a fair use, even if he wants to put RVs and things like that. Of course, I don't want it to become a junkyard, but I personally do not have a problem with anything he's proposed so far because of where it's located, because of how it's screened, and because of how he's going to use it. I just see no impact. If this was on close to a street or close to another, business that wasn't, it's surrounded by industrial. And so I think he's been very clear that these are maybe ancillary uses of the facility, not primary uses.
But not overnight stay, correct?
Overnight stay, I agree. I do not want overnight stay.
I
think that's a bad deal.
agree with that one. It is not our intention to have a, what'd you call it, Rashad, a truck, like the jet pilot thing. It's not our intention to do that. And they provide power and air conditioning of those trucks. We're providing nothing. It is not our intention that they would stay overnight. And so if we want to put that limitation, and then no overnight idling, I get aggravated at truckers who leave their trucks running just because they don't want to turn them off. But, so I'm cool with that kind of restriction in there.
I just want to make sure we set our staff up to be successful, and if we come up with something, I want to make sure we're setting our staff up. We're going to say it has to be this way. We set them up to be successful, and I'm not sure it's detrimental to the town if we allow these other uses.
I don't necessarily disagree with what Mr. Finch said, or with what Mr. Wade or Mr. Egan said either. I'm still not an overly big fan, but it is in a location which sort of isolates my lack of fandom. However, with regards to no overnight idling, I'd also echo no overnight stay at all.
Yeah.
I mean, because that could be, someone in a year from now may say, well, we can overnight stay because we're not idling. So I would be a fan of it more likely, I think, if we restricted no overnight stay. I don't want it to be a hotel.
Right.
We may have a hotel in town. We may need them to stay in a hotel. So I don't want to open up a hotel there and no overnight idling either. So specific to both of those, generally I agree with Councilman Finch, even though I'm still not a big fan. If we eliminate those two items, then I think I would be a bigger fan.
Council, additional discussions on this topic? Any change in mind from Mr. Egan, Mr. Wade, or your desire to restrict beyond trailer?
I think I'm okay. I understand. I'm really not opposed to this. I'm really trying to find a workable solution that doesn't open up something we're not going to be proud of in the future. I don't see any tax generation off of this. Very minimal, should I believe. I don't believe Mr. Timms is in the audience.
No, he's not. He's an Oklahoma guy, and
I understand.
so, yeah,
So I hope he maybe is watching, so he's hearing this discussion. But, yeah, I'm okay. I just don't want it, I think my concern is it turning into something that we're not really approving, but we end up allowing to happen. We don't need a trailer park. We have provisions for those things.
Mr. Clark?
Mr. Jackson, you said you've been trying to sell this or lease this land for 9 years.
Yes, sir.
now. What other uses have you looked at in the past?
You know, I always felt like, and I've been working in Sunnyvale Center, I guess it's now been 15 years, because I remember when this building was brand new. I didn't know it was that old. I was hired by the guy who owned Sunnyvale Center to basically sell out everything. He had Lou Gehrig's disease and still alive here 17 years later, 18 years later. But we sold everything out. At that time, he'd sold out Vince Hagen and what is now McElroy Metals, and I sold out all the other buildings and all the other land. And I'm a minority partner in two pieces, the 10 acres on the south side and the 4.6 in the middle of the park. This site belongs to Frank Finan of Acura Systems. He wanted to expand his property. You know, John Payne made him buy the whole 16 acres so he could get, you know, some for himself. And then he sold off this small site to a company, and then Randy Timms bought that company. So he has 1.35 acres, more or less, and he's trying to buy the 10.9 that we have remaining. So all that to say, what have I tried to get? You know, I'm a broker. I put it out amongst all the brokerage community in Dallas. I always felt like Sunnyvale Center uses, especially inside the park, are going to be manufacturing or service companies, contractors or plumbers or electricians, things like that, or perhaps distribution. It's not a great distribution location, although the bread company went there on Clay Road. This use just became a really logical use. There is a demand for it. Randy Timms can utilize a big portion of the property himself just with his relationship with Marazzi. And I get calls all the time from truckers saying, do you have a place I can store my rig? And frankly, everything in Sunnyvale Center is owner occupied and totally full. It just became a really logical use that there seems to be a demand for, and I'm feeling like, or we made an effort to design a product that would not be an ugly product, you know, especially, and he's not going to be fired up putting in, I think it's 164-foot Hennius down that fence line, but, you know, I felt like we needed to screen this off in a soft way and give him, you know, let him have a property that meets his functions, but that also does not negatively impact the other users within Sunnyvale Center.
Okay. And also, is the building going to be used for a service center at all? Or is it basically just storage right now? So any type of truck?
The building is really kind of built as a truck shop for people who are, you know, operating within the park there. There's a little office component and such, and we're pondering putting a kind of a 24-hour access bathroom so that the trucker can come in, punch the code, put his truck in place, take care of business real quick, and then leave. Someone mentioned, well, would there be, you know, people spending the night in there? And we're not going to design it that way. It's going to be just a small 24-hour access restroom, perhaps a shower, so that the guy can, you know, just take care of business and then head to the house. So that is what the concept is at this time.
Right, okay. And this may be for Rashad, or what are we looking at for the tax revenue for this? Is there any kind of projections or anything?
I would have to lean on the applicant or Tracy to answer that. I haven't.
It's going to be what, ad valorem tax, is that right?
Yeah, this isn't going to produce sales tax generation. You'll get property taxes, especially from the machinery and stuff, but nothing with sales tax.
Right, okay. Okay, thank you.
That's what the alcohol license was for.
Did you say you're selling alcohol there? Was that what you just said?
Yeah, I'm thinking that that'll boost business.
Okay, council, additional discussions or questions for the applicant? Thank you, Mr. Jackson. Stay around and we're going to open up for public hearing.
Thank you.
Members of the audience, this is a public hearing agenda item, so if you would like to come forward and discuss this topic, please come forward at this time. No one is coming forward, so I'm going to close the public hearing. Council, this is the first reading, so we will make a motion here shortly. Are there additional discussions on that topic?
Mr. Mayor, I want to echo that I can support it with provisions of no overnight stay or idling.
So when you make a motion, let's include that in our motion. Okay, with that, let me call for a motion with respect to the act upon the Sunnyvale Center Park Service and Park Plan Development Ordinance 19-11 PD-04.
Mayor, could I make a quick comment?
Yes, sir.
And if Member Allen wants to make the motion, and being an RV owner, boondocking is a term that gets used in that, that I would also include with that, no boondocking, because you can set up with batteries and live inside the cab all night long without having anything running.
Do you-
So
Do you know how to pronounce or spell what you just said?
boondocking, boondocking.
And I appreciate that.
Definition there, but I would just say no overnight staying, no overnight stay regardless of the current term.
Okay, I'm good with that too.
We don't have to
Whew.
define it.
Thank you so much for saving me that trouble, Mr. Allen, do you have a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to approve, however, no overnight stay, no idling, no boondocking, no anything that resembles that. As I agree with Councilman Wade, these PDs seem to bite us in the tail in different areas about 10 years down the line. So let's capture that, no overnight stay, and whatever it is, that's my motion.
So overnight, no overnight stay and overnight idling. Did we capture that completely, Mr. Dort?
Yes, we'll add that to the actual PD standards.
Yes.
And that'll be presented at the second hearing.
Okay. So a second on the motion. Motion made by Mr. Allen to approve the ordinance 19-11 PD-04 with an amendment to include, to restrict overnight stay and overnight idling.
Mayor, it should be duly noted that Mr. Egan has expressed no objection to Fotinias.
Particularly red tip Fotinias. I know the rest of them are okay.
Seconded by Mr. Egan. Yeah, we don't heard the motion. Additional discussions. All in favor signify. All opposed. Motion passed 6-0. Mr. Rashad Jackson, we will make the changes and we will review that again the next meeting.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, that is the end of the public hearing portion of, sorry, one more item. Sorry, item number 5. That is to hold a public hearing to consider and act upon a request by Seth Kelly, PE RLK Engineering, to approve a replat for the Sunnyvale School addition at or about 216 North Collins Road, southeast corner of Hounsell Road and North Collins Road. Mr. Rashad Jackson?
Mayor, Town Council, the applicant's requesting approval of replat for Sunnyvale School Addition. The proposed purpose of the replat is to realign Hounsell Lane on the east side of the property and to add a lot for the development of the Sunnyvale Intermediate School property. The request will allow for the abandonment of the existing alignment of Hounsell Lane and will designate the new proposed alignment for Hounsell Lane to align with that of Nance as it goes further to the north and to the east. Upon review, it was determined that the future route of Hounsell should be revised so that it aligns with Nance to help with traffic flow around that area, and also considering the new point of entry for the Stony Creek Track 4, where people will be coming and going from that area as well. Staff has provided an exhibit in your memo, with your memo, that shows a portion of the plat designating that extension. A spur connection that will tie into Nance is possibly shown there. The school district and staff has worked together to try to resolve an issue that came about with this proposal with regard to that spur connection from Hounslow to Nance, which will provide access around the school site. That was originally shown to be right behind those homes on Nance. Now it's been adjusted and shifted to the west so that it will not cause potential harm to those property owners as people come and go from that area. Town staff recommends approval, and the applicant is here to speak about any other details.
Council, are there any questions for the staff? If not, the applicant is here. Good evening, Mr. Williams.
Good evening, how are you?
Doing well.
It's a privilege to be with you tonight. This is the culmination of what's been a long process. We've talked about the extension to Hounslow Lane probably off and on for a couple years, and how it would incorporate into Nance. When this went to P&Z, there was some questions. There are, I believe, 5 homes right on Nance Road that really the road would have, the extension would have really let out into their backyard, so to speak. They at first approached Town Manager Guthrie, and she and I talked about it a couple times. I actually went with a couple of the landowners to some property, and we looked at an alternate route for the extension. I will tell you that your town manager is, she's a pleasure to work with. We were able to come to a quick resolution with the property owners, and she got town staff on it. Seth Kelly is here tonight from RLK Engineering, and he was able to make some modifications. We feel like that this plan will be amenable both to the school district and to the property owners. We feel like it's something that's going to be very workable. So,
okay. Thank you, Mr. Williams. Are there any questions for the applicant? Go ahead, Mr. Finch.
More comments.
Okay. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Williams. Okay, this is a public hearing portion of the agenda. If anyone from the audience would like to come and speak to the council at this time, please come forward. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. My name is David Lassen, 412 Duxbury Court. I live in the westernmost home on Duxbury that was affected by the spur, and I just want to commend Town Manager Guthrie and Mr. Williams, who have both been very responsive to myself and my neighbors as far as helping to find a more agreeable solution. My understanding of the spur as currently laid out is I think it now feeds into Nance just west of my property line, which I think is as good a solution as we can hope for, versus being about 3 or 4 houses down to where myself and 3 or 4 of my neighbors have all of the bus and school traffic every morning and every afternoon. So again, I'm just mainly here to commend Ms. Guthrie and Mr. Williams and appreciate their work for this project. So,
Thank you, sir. Anyone else like to come forward? Okay, no one else is coming forward, so I'm going to close the public hearing. Council, are there additional discussions on this topic? Okay, if not, can I have a motion with respect to the request by Seth Kelly, RLK Engineering, to approve a replat for the Sunnyvale School addition at Toraba 216 North Collins Road?
So moved to approve.
Motion made by Mr. Egan to approve the application.
Second.
Second by Mr. Clark to approve the request from the applicant. Everyone heard the motion. Are there additional discussions? If not, all in favor signify. All opposed, motion passed 6-0. Thank you, gentlemen. Moving on to the discussion action item portion of the agenda. The first one is economic development. discuss and consider and act upon the 2018-2023 Economic Development Strategic Plan.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Sorry, I felt silly sitting there, so I'm going to stand up. When I first came on board, it was no secret that at that time our Economic Development Board and Council weren't always on the same page. So in order to make the board and council better align, we've never had an economic development strategic plan. So we started in on trying to create and put together a plan that would have buy-in from both the Economic Development Board and council as well. So everybody knew what we were working on and what we were doing and why. We started going through goals and projects and what a strategic plan would look like back in September of 2017. And in December 2017, the Economic Development Boards had revised and approved a new mission statement. In 2018, January of 2018, we held an economic development joint session between the 4A and 4B Economic Development Boards to figure out what each other's goals were and how they aligned together as well as separately. In February of 2018, the Economic Development Board held a joint meeting with Town Council at the time to discuss the goals, the objectives, and what we were looking at. In March of that year, we kind of prioritized our top goals, looking at what council as well as the boards had wanted. In September of 2018, we had presented a draft economic development plan. And then in October, we revised the plan after we had another joint session with council. At that time, we had new council members and new mayors, so we wanted to represent that. And then in March of this year, the Economic Development Boards had approved the 2018-2023 Economic Development Strategic Plan. And one of the questions that came up was, why not make it the 2019-2024 plan? It started in 2017 with the hopes that we would get this adopted in 2018, and we've already kind of made some of those steps, so we didn't want to take away from what we had already done in 2018, so wanted to keep it 2018 to 2023. This is a working document, kind of looking at it. We plan on reviewing it annually and revise it as we need it. Also, you'll notice a lot of blank pages in the document as well. And that's we have a Excel spreadsheet that's kind of the implementation. So it takes everything within the strategic plan, lays it out to where we have a time frame on if it's an ongoing project, if it's something 1 to 6 months, 6 months to a year, 1 to 3 years, what that time frame looks like so we know what our priorities are. Understand that this strategic plan is a tall order. It's kind of essentially what I'm led to be able to do. And I think that I'm hopeful we've accomplished some of those items and set the foundation within this past year. And I'm hopeful for the next 4 years we'll be able to accomplish a lot in this strategic plan. We have a great economic development board, both of them, that help me out tremendously. And I'm very thankful for all of them, for all of their help. In this, you'll notice you're probably wondering what's changed in this since the last time you saw it. There's not a whole lot of content change. It's mostly rewording, reorganization, some grammatical changes. We've updated the council vision that has recently been updated, and the removal of the SWOT analysis. The SWOT analysis was done in 2016, and we just felt like it was not where it needed to be up to date. So maybe looking at doing something in the future for another SWOT analysis. Other than that, I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Tracy, Mr. Anderson, thank you very much for putting this together. A couple of questions on Table 10. We got different dates, right? We had Table 10 talks about 5-year action plan.
What page are you on, Mayor?
On page 20. Is it 20 or 21, 22?
Okay, yes, sir.
All the dates are passed, right?
Well, and so for the Table 10 and 11 on page 21, those came directly from the Parks Open and Master Plan.
Right.
And so once we get that updated, which we're going to look at doing within this next year, this will change. These tables will be updated with the new Parks Master Plan.
So the multi-purpose gym, the aerobic room, arts and craft, they're all part of the Parks Master Plan? Things on Table 11?
Table 10 and 11, yes, sir.
So that's you will update that only after the,
This is more of an action plan, right, Mr. Guthrie?
Well, I think what she's doing in this section is saying, here are priorities that are set in other documents. It was funny because I also kind of questioned some of the formatting and some of the, the way this is presented. And she showed me it's a direct copy from, just a placement from another plan. And I think that's important to tie all of our plans together, especially for 4B, who, really works on our parks. So she's taking something directly from the parks plan and saying, here's an input, these are goals that were set in that plan, we now need to carry them through this plan. So that's the way I took this
so
section.
where do we go from here?
Well, I think her point of that it's a living and breathing plan, and so it's on our project matrix to update the parks master plan, and that has to be done if we're going to get any kind of parks grants. You have to update that plan periodically, and it's scheduled to happen this year. So I think these are, if you look through the list, some of these have happened, the majority of them have not. So I think it's an important input that these were things that were planned, they haven't happened, and we should continue looking at them and deciding in the next version, do they go out or do they carry forward? So I just think they're inputs. It's almost like doing a SWOT analysis, is an environmental scan of what's out there and then carrying it forward.
Okay, thank you. Council, additional questions for Ms. Anderson?
Tracy, I have some questions with regard, mostly just holistically, with some of the content. It seems to me that in the last year, we've probably added some words and some things that I don't see in here. So are we still updating this document? Not to get into the weeds on that tonight, but there's still some things we're going to update on this before we stamp this and say this is done, it's no longer a draft, it's final?
Well, the Economic Development Boards approved this document in March, so, we have not added any content that I am recalling. It's just more organization, more grammatical stuff. If there's something in particular that you've seen, please let me know.
And one thing that I discussed with another council member who asked me a similar question is, the timing is a little bit off because you all are just going into your strategic planning right now. So I think there is an opportunity that once we meet and go through your strategic planning, that you could come back and say, hey, we've identified these additional priorities or things that are really important to us. Is there a chance to modify this document and have them go back and amend it? And she said openly that this is a living, breathing document. So I think, there's an opportunity to add input if something's changed or something's missed, or we just talk further strategically in your own retreat.
Well, and I think keeping in mind, too, this was started back in August of 2017. So when you're looking at page 7, it's based on the top 5 goals of council at that time. It's based on the top goals of the boards to date, but then it's also taking in the comprehensive plan of 2017 and taking those goals 1 through 9 that were straight from the comprehensive plan. So most of the stuff that is in here is either from the town's comprehensive plan or the Parks and Rec Open Space Master Plan, as well as citizen surveys that were done back in 2015.
Right, so I would be in favor of definitely circling up once we go through our plan. And I think we have a meeting coming up in the next few months, don't we? Maybe June or so, where we're supposed to get 4A, 4AB.
So we have a joint EDC meeting on April 29th.
Yeah, that's,
So maybe
the
that's too
strategic plan
soon.
will be after that, right, Susan? So,
Right,
so
it's
we will have a
too
couple of
soon, but-
opportunities to
right,
take it.
Okay, but no, I look forward to working with 4A, 4B, with the town council and updating this, revising this, working together to hash all this up, to make sure we're on the same page.
Council, are there additional discussions or questions on this one? Okay. Ms. Guthrie, is there an action on this one? Did we adopt it? Is what-
If you can adopt it, it's, like I said, it's a working document. We'll make changes as we need to make changes to it. We can review it. If council has updated goals and actions that they would like economic development to do, we can definitely take it back to the board and revisit it that time. It's just kind of stamping of approval that we can move forward and we have some sort of plan to kind of guide us and work off of now, understanding that there may be changes to it.
So the action, there's an
To
action here
approve the-
tonight to approve it, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Council, are we ready to?
So what
Yes,
is
sir.
the purpose? So you're asking us to adopt this, which is, half of it is blank. What are we doing with it when we adopt it, when we take a formal action to, what are we doing with it?
I thought I'm looking at it as a roadmap, right? So this is what the roadmap 4A and 4B came up with. They're asking to see whether council officially agree with the roadmap. We had discussions offline, not offline, but different forum. Am I speaking out of terms here?
So the part that's blank that you see in there, that's the implementation chart. This document has changed so many times over the last year and a half that every time a change is made, I have to make it to the spreadsheet. And that spreadsheet in the blank pages is essentially each item taken from this spreadsheet, copied and pasted over into this document, and then it just provides a time frame in addition to what that line item says. So for example, when you're looking at the very first item under retail and entertainment, it takes 1.1 and it assigns a time frame to it. And then it takes 1.1.1 and assigns a time frame to it. So it's just taking everything out of this document and assigning a time frame in a spreadsheet format that we can work off of.
Project management schedule.
Yes, sir.
So at what point will the 5-year action plans be updated?
I'm sorry, say that again?
At what point will the 5-year action plans be updated?
Well, we're going to review these annually. As we start to finish projects, then those will be highlighted and marked off saying that they're completed, kind of similar to Ms. Guthrie's action plan that she has for our project matrix now. It essentially will be the same thing where we're taking those action items and we're setting the priorities to them and then moving them off the list as we complete them.
Yeah, and I see this as been stated already, as a general framework, right? And so I struggle with it a little bit as well, adopting a document that's not, I don't know if how we work to ever get to the final document, because it's always constantly changing and moving, and we come up with different priorities, so I struggle with that a little bit as well, and I've had some discussions about that, but I think as far as a general framework of a plan to move forward, I think it is good as far as a general framework, and that's kind of the way I look at it. Is I'm not adopting every sentence in this document. I'm adopting the framework that sets us on a path to move forward to a strategy. So that's just my take.
So this is the strategic plan, right? That's when, so the question is, do we want to adopt this plan? Understanding that this is a living document.
I'm okay with it, as I just stated, Mayor, just as a framework and a living document that provides some guidance to Tracy and their boards to say, we agree with this general framework and mission of moving forward. So
I mean, if we don't agree with it, then what do we do, right?
Yeah, right.
So then we have to go back and work with the 404B
Exactly.
anyway. So
I
that's the process anyway. It's a continuous iteration. So
That's
I think
exactly right.
I think the right approach is to approve it, but that's my opinion. So I'm going to call for a motion here with respect to the 2018-2023 Economic Development Strategic Plan.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Egan to approve the strategic plan as presented and seconded by Mr. Finch. Everyone heard the motion. Are there additional discussions on this topic? If not, all in favor signify. All opposed, motion passed 6-0.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. Appreciate you. Thank you, 4B, for our team members. Moving on to the item number 7, that is to discuss and consider and act upon Resolution 19-13, a resolution in support of the Rails to Trail Safe Routes to School Program Project. Ms. Anderson?
Good evening again, Mayor and Council. As you all know, we've been working on the Rails to Trails project, and currently where that sits is we are looking at negotiations with Luminant on trying to purchase the rail line. We're also in the process of going through grants to see what we can get for grant approvals. In the process of applying for the grants, they do ask for letters of support. So we currently have letters of our support from Dallas County as well as the Sunnyvale ISD, and this is a resolution just asking for support from council as well. And if you have any questions, I've asked Eric Weiss to be here, as he's been the one that's been integral in doing this whole project.
Mr. Weiss, can I ask you to come forward and kind of give us a status on where we are, and you've done a lot of work on this one.
Eric Wise, 498 East Trip Road. We've made great progress. Just today we were communicating with Luminant. Kevin and I and Tracy and the town manager met with Luminant last week. Had a very positive meeting. It went on for, I guess, almost 2 hours, and Rashad as well. And it's just, I'm excited about it. The outlook from the meeting with Luminant was that they want to come to a positive win-win relationship with the town and move forward with the transaction. They've stated that they would like to enter into a sale with the town for the entire spur. They don't want to break it up. They don't want to piecemeal it. We're in the middle of negotiating some aspects of it that, I don't really want to go into all those little bitty details. A former Sunnyvale member has been also, our citizen has been very helpful in this process. David Holly and the Friends of Sunnyvale Trails did a lot of background work on evaluating the appraisals that were done and helped us identify what we believe are proper values and identify other ways of evaluating a rail spur in terms of its value moving forward in a transaction. This specific spur doesn't appear to have value to many other people other than the use that we're looking at it for. And so Luminant has asked us to go back, reformat some of the documentation that was prepared by Friends of Sunnyvale Trails so that the property manager, the gentleman that we're in communication with, meets with the board weekly, and they approve or deny property sales or property transactions based on his recommendations. Luminant, Vistra, TXU owns over 270,000 acres across the country, and they get a lot of asks. And so the original ask was for a donation, and they came back and said, we have to say no to the donation, but we want to work out a positive agreement with you. And so he's basically saying, hey, help me help you come up with a good argument so that when I go to the board, they approve it. And so that's what we're in the process of. We're planning on identifying what we believe is the right price so that when we meet on the 29th, we can discuss that and come to an agreement, and then he can take it the next week and work to get that approved. On the 12th of this month, we're moving forward with the grant applications for the Safe Routes to Schools. This is the preliminary application deadline. We're able to move forward with that because we are in agreement, or not in agreement, we are in negotiations to acquire the property. If we are unable to do that by the deadline that's much farther out in the year, then the grant wouldn't move forward. But right now we are specifically moving forward with the application for Safe Routes to Schools, and then we'll come back around next year with additional North Central Texas Council of Governments applications, as well as through TxDOT. We're evaluating many other options for grants, Texas Parks and Wildlife. So there's, in this process, going all the way back to the first time I spoke with you about this, we've been able to identify many more avenues of funding for developing the trail, but we first and foremost have to acquire it.
Thank you, Mr. Wise, for all the time you spent on this. Really appreciate all that effort you've done, so thank you.
So now we'll talk more on 29th, right? April 29th? Okay. And we will know, when will we know something about the grants application?
Well, we'll have the packet complete pending y'all's approval of this resolution to move forward.
Okay.
And that'll go forward on the 12th. They'll review, we won't know, I doubt we'll know by the 29th meeting. But again, the individuals we've met with within TxDOT, within North Central Texas Council of Governments have all been very positive over the overall project. Believe it would be approved. It's, again, the funding that we're looking for in this is actually safe routes to school. You don't even have to do a match. We're still proposing the 20% on our part. So we gain $4 for every one that we put up. And this would be a phased project compared to when we originally approached it. And this would be the first step, again, once it's acquired, to do all the connecting stuff immediately around the school campus, and then we branch out from there.
So, Eric, so our expense will be how much ever we agree with the Lumen, right? The cost of
acquiring the property.
acquiring the property, then 20%, is that the total? Okay. Hopefully we can talk some numbers when
And
we
then
get to
Dallas County had originally already granted us $500,000, but that was linked to prior funding years. And so when we didn't move forward a couple of years ago, that money got redirected. They gave us a positive, they already passed a resolution in support of it and said that we'd be looked at favorably when we apply next year when the money is available again for the county, so.
Again, that's for the trails.
Right.
Council questions for Mr. Weiss or Ms. Anderson?
Eric, this resolution in section 3 refers to a minimum cash match of 20%. Key word there being minimum. What are we looking at in reality?
Well, in the cash match, again, what we're planning on doing is a minimum of 20%, normally 20%. But some of these can come back at different numbers. And if we plan on moving forward in a phased approach, we just move forward with what we can at the time. 20% seems to be kind of the going number. And we believe, and from sitting through a number of these presentations, you can go above that. And they say sometimes it's looked at favorably when a community comes in and says, we're willing to go 25% match or 30%. We believe 20 is going to be adequate, but it shouldn't be much more. But that's, again, for the development costs, not the acquisition costs.
So in other words, I'm sorry, Jim, just to kind of put it in a different set of words, we're giving them that we would at least match it at 20%. So it's kind of giving them an opportunity to see that
right.
We're going to go, we're not doing 5. We're not doing 1. We're going to do at least 20.
Correct.
In some way, shape, form, or manner.
Correct.
I'm sorry.
So is the anticipation that the town will be doing some portion of this, or is it all 4B?
All 4B, all economic development. Primarily 4B.
Okay. Wordsmithing the resolution doesn't say that, so is there any way to restate that so the town is not committed for the minimum 20%? We could support
Yeah,
the
we can just-
resolution
we can take
without
out that.
putting ourselves on the hook for some portion of the funding.
We can take out that section on there and just have take out the town of Sunnyvale and in that section.
Or I would say, personally, I would say the town of Sunnyvale's 4B Economic Development Board. Because you have to prove what we do, so to me, we are part of Sunnyvale. So. I hear what you're saying. You just don't want it coming from the general fund or some other, you want it coming from the.
I wanted to make
dedicated-
sure we understand the commitment
Right.
when we do this statement.
So we can change that section 3 to read, the town of Sunnyvale's 4B Development Corporation commits to fund or pass through funds from other sources for a minimum local cash match of 20% of the total project cost.
But does that look like, because all the rest of the statements, at least 1 through 5. Actually, all the statements start out saying the town of Sunnyvale and the Sunnyvale 4B Corporation. Does that present, give an appearance of something that's an unexpected appearance? Just thinking.
My response to that is, yes, the town of Sunnyvale is supporting the project. Will serve as the public sponsor, but we're making clarification as to who's going to provide the funding.
Right. Because as you move forward with the grants, you know, the town staff, town, especially town engineer and development is actively involved with TxDOT, you know, versus us as a board. We're just kind of the funding mechanism. So.
I'm curious if we've benchmarked against any other resolutions from other towns that have been successful, and is this wording match something that's been submitted so that we're consistent with other towns or other submissions? And as it relates to Section 3, is that consistent with successful submissions? Do we know?
I can't answer that.
Okay.
So this came as, it was a template from TxDOT on what other towns have used. This is their template that they utilize for resolutions for towns for these projects.
The entire resolution? The entire? Okay.
Leslie made a great suggestion that might kind of temper what you're wanting, but make it look better. Just to put the town of Sunnyvale under Section 3. The town of Sunnyvale supports the 4B Development Corporation's commitment to fund underpass. So it's still supporting, but it's clearly delineating. So Leslie's great idea.
Good.
Okay, the town of Sunnyvale supports Sunnyvale 4B Development Corporation commitment to fund or pass through, right? Okay. Okay. Council, additional question for the 4B Corporation. Anderson?
Thanks, Eric, for all your work. Appreciate it.
So I'm going to try to read the resolution. Only going to read the Section 3, if that's okay with everybody. Can I have a motion with respect to Resolution 19-13, a resolution of the Town Council of the Town of Sunnyvale approving the resolution in support of the Rails to Trail Safe Routes to School program project. Then all the whereas are exactly what is listed, and the resolution Section 1 and 2 will remain same. Section 3 will change to the Town of Sunnyvale supports Sunnyvale 4B Development Corporation's commitment to fund or pass through fund from other sources for a minimal local cash match of 20% of the total project cost. And Section 4 and Section 5 remain same. Did I capture that right?
Additional sections,
Right, 6 through 9 also.
6 through 9.
Yes. And Section 6 through 9 remain same.
Right, so motion to approve Resolution 1913
With amendments.
with the change to Section 3.
Second.
Okay, motion made by Mr. Clark to approve Resolution 19-13 with amendments to Section 3 as read, and second by Mr. Egan. Everyone heard the motion. Are there additional discussions? All in favor of the motion signify. All opposed? Motion passed 6-0. Thank you very much again, once again. Thank you. Moving on to the town secretary portion of the agenda, item number 8. Discuss and consider and act upon appointing Joe B. Joseph to the library board as an alternate member for an unexpired term ending in 2020. Ms. Ramsey?
Mayor and council, as you all know, on March 25th, Ms. Powell tendered her resignation effective immediately from the library board as an alternate member.
Mr. Joby Joseph had also applied for this position and was interviewed by you all back on August the 27th of 2018. On March 26th, I reached out to Mr. Joseph via email asking him if he was still interested in serving in that capacity. In an email dated March 26th, Mr. Joseph advised that he would still be interested in serving in that capacity. He was also the only other applicant remaining that wasn't chosen for that position.
Thank you, Ms. Ramsey. Are there any questions on this topic? If not, can I have a motion to approve the recommendation to appoint Joby Joseph to the Library Board as an alternate member for an unexpired term ending in 2020?
Mayor, so moved as stated.
Motion made by Alan to appoint Mr. Joseph, second by Mr. Finch. Are there additional discussions on this topic? All in favor of the motion signify. All opposed, motion passed 6-0. Thank you, Ms. Ramsey. Going on to the item number 9, I really sincerely appreciate the members of the Ethics Commission for being patient and waiting. This is to presentation and discussion related to the recommended changes to the town's Code of Ethics to be given by members of the Ethics Committee. Mr. Anderson. Good evening, sir.
Mayor,
Thank
if I-
you.
Mayor, if I can start, I want to
Yes,
give
ma'am.
I want to give a little background and a little bit of kudos too. So back in 2018, you all defined the scope for the Ethics Review Committee, and you appointed citizens to serve on that committee, and there were 7 of them. This Ethics Committee was charged with reviewing the town's current code of ethics and presenting any recommended changes to you all by tonight, which was deadline. I just wanted to say that this committee has met once a month since November, meeting twice in March so that they would be able to finalize all their recommendations and be able to present that to y'all on y'all's scheduled timeline. I also wanted to personally say it's been a pleasure working with these individuals on this committee. All of them have done an excellent job. However, I want to say a special thanks to Mr. Anderson and Mr. Eldridge. I couldn't have done this without them. They prepared all the documents. They didn't rely on me to do any of them. They fully took that off of me, and it completely helped. So they've done a lot. This committee has also drafted recommended rules of procedures, which will also be presented to y'all, but that will be at a later date. Chairperson Anderson, along with members Egan, members Hill, member Powell, and member Eldridge are all present tonight for the presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Ramsey. Ms. Anderson.
Well, Mayor, council, staff, and the audience who's here, I'm Charles Anderson. For some reason, you appointed me the chair of the Ethics Commission, and I would also like to thank, in addition to the members who are here, the staff support which we received, and please don't let Town Secretary Ramsey hide too much. She was very helpful to us. We got a chance to meet and talk with and get great input from your new town manager, Town Manager Guthrie. Thank you so much, and I think you'll see some of her handiwork in here. And a special thanks to Town Attorney Dodd. Thank you. And all of these people, I would add, were persons who did take part in our discussion, who gave us insights into how things operate and where things could be improved. So this was very much a team effort, and I was very privileged to work with these members of our staff and our town on the committee, and the report you see is what we have to give you. The city secretary has taken away about half of what I had to tell you, so we'll kind of abbreviate that a bit. I do have a bit of a PowerPoint. We've already been through the committee here and the charge. The compliance with the town charter, I'll mention, was probably the thing that drove us more than anything, probably the thing that most of the substantive changes that we made were driven by. There were not conflicts with state law. We did look. We have incorporated some references to state law where we thought they were required. Your charge to us was very broad. any legal, administrative, or ethical issues, and how do you improve, and how do we improve, how would we recommend to you all to improve the application of the Code of Ethics. So that's what we started with. Let me go on and give you some overview. There were what I would call non-substantive changes and substantive changes. The non-substantive changes, if you looked at the red line copy, and read it closely, you'll probably see most of the red lines in the red line copy were non-substantive changes. So please don't worry about the number or color of the ink in the red line copy. And why is that? What did we do to cause that? Well, the first thing that happened really substantively was we were looking through the code. There was this reference over and over again to EAOs, which are elected and appointed officials, and then you had to really scour through the document to find out, okay, what is the document really talking about? So what we did was say, we'll just define it, we'll put it in the glossary, and as the committee looked at it, we said, and to make this easy, we're going to move the glossary up to the front. So we have done that. So, but what that does for the red line copy is you've got a red line glossary in the front, and you've got a red line glossary in the back. So you kind of doubled up on the glossary there. And then, of course, once you move the glossary, then you got to change the index in the table of contents. So that was another 2 pages. So really, if you start taking all those away, I think we can get down to just a very few things. I'll mention on the application items, and maybe this is a good point to mention that. This is like, how can we make this more effective and whatnot? One of the things that we mentioned, and I'm going to throw another rose to the staff here, we mentioned, well, gosh, it would be great if the Code of Ethics was a little more prominently displayed on the web page. Everybody felt good about that, and I was looking 2 weeks later and it was already done. So the staff's way ahead, so we appreciate that. We did have some other things. There are in the back a list of ethics resources, we call them. These are basically state laws or forms that are used. They're put here basically for the convenience of people to know this is what we have to live by. They're not something that really lives anywhere other than, say, as a link. Like, say, a lot of these are state laws. You can go to the state webpage and get those. Not a lot of additional work, but we'd like to recommend that there be that to help people along with this subject of ethics. In that regard, application, and I'll move quickly on from there because we have a couple of substantive things I really need to talk about. The other thing we recommended was that the people acknowledge, and we changed that just slightly in the back, that when they become appointed as an official on one of the boards or commissions, that they acknowledge there is a code of ethics, that they acknowledge that, come back and acknowledge it each year, and that there's actually an agenda item for people to get refreshed or ask questions about the code of ethics, and we felt this would help keep it fresh. So that's application changes, and that's what we took for application changes. If this council had meant something else for application changes, we're happy to look at that again, but we felt that was one of the best things we could do for the application. Let me get to the substantive changes, and these were kind of interesting. In fact, they were the most fascinating to us, and you know, please forgive me. I mean, all these meetings about ethics, it's very important to us, and surely this is the most important item on your agenda tonight, right? So even though it's not an action item, but nevertheless, we looked at this. There's a whole section in the town charter on ethics, and we kind of held that section 3.07, up to the current Code of Ethics. And we found some things that did not appear in the Code of Ethics and were relatively easy. There was guidelines for officials and staff being important there. So what we did, we went back and included on the purpose a reference that the staff would use these as guidelines with particular reference to the personnel policies, which are about a 100-page document. So the staff is regulated much more so than the board and commission members, and we felt that was adequate and would meet the requirement of the town charter. There was a reference that the code of ethics would relate to standards related to offenses against public administration, which is a whole chapter in the penal code. All we did was include that. If you're looking, I've got that in the draft, it's on page 5. If you're looking at the redlined copy, it's on page 7, but we just included a reference to chapter 36, and this is not using privileged information for personal gain, and things like official oppression, and I'll defer to Attorney Dodd for more specifications on that. There was a specific reference, which I think is a good one in there, about restrictions on serving as a surety of someone who guarantees an obligation to the town. It could be a performance or payment bond or something like that. And we did not find that in the current code, so we placed that in the code. And that would be page 4 of the draft, or the red line copy, page 6. And these were things that were, there wasn't a lot of discussion about those. It was just in order to make it conform and be more specific. The last thing I have here is there's also an item in 3.07 that says that people who violate, officials who violate, could face removal from office, which is in there, and ineligibility to hold a town office for or employment for up to 5 years, which I didn't see that in there, but I would recommend, as the charter says, that it be in an ordinance if you choose to adopt these changes. So that could be something that would be in the ordinance as the charter recommends. The first time or two through the charter, I focused on 307, and I really didn't find too much else in the charter, but we did find an additional thing in the charter, and that was in 306. And now I've got it highlighted here. I hope you all can see, but 306 of the charter talks about forfeiture of office. And it actually provides that if you violate an express prohibition of the charter, even as a council member, you could be removed from office. And so here were some teeth that then we had to deal with. Now, in my presentation, my little PowerPoint here, I've been putting some of the signs that I found around Sunnyvale. They're guidelines, they're wayfinding signs, and really, to a large extent, that's what a code of ethics is. It's a path to right behavior. It wants to set patterns of behavior that inspire confidence that the town is run well and that it has integrity. And really, it says just that, and I couldn't improve on that. However, we did talk about some of the sanctions and removal, and the town attorney was quite helpful in that, and we although it's relatively easy for you all to take action against someone who doesn't meet the mark, say who's on a board or commission, someone that you've appointed, we felt it was a different matter to try to overturn an election without some specific authorization. Well, lo and behold, this was it, and it presented us with certain problems because the first problem was, what is an express prohibition? And if it says you will do something and you don't do it, is that an express prohibition? And you know, there were some semantic aspects to this. So what the committee did, we created a relatively short list of express prohibitions, that things that would, in our opinion, cause at least the consideration of whether an office should be forfeited. That list is on, in the draft, it's on page 4 and 5. In the red line, it's on 6 and 7. And it's the kind of things that you might expect: bribery, release of confidential information to the detriment of the town, non-reported conflict of interests, repeated or multiple violations of any town or provisions of the ethics code, and actions that interfere with the staff's ability to operate, including violations of Chapter 36, sexual harassment, physical violence, that kind of thing. So, in a way, what we've done here is provide a clarity for what express prohibitions are. We've set them out. We actually were able to consolidate the conflict of interest and the confidential information sections into these express prohibitions, the ones with the most teeth. And later in the document, we went back and made sure that this was listed under the sanctions section to be sure, A, that if anybody was subject to that, they got notice and hearing, they got their due process, and very importantly, that the council got to basically pass on this. And without that, I mean, it was kind of a free-for-all. The charter provides that you would forfeit office if you did some of these things, if you violated the express prohibition, and if we didn't set up a procedure for the council to do that, it's possible that someone could have gone to court and tried to forfeit, not just the council, but maybe another board or commission member. So we felt this was very important. This is probably the most substantive thing that we looked at, but it's basically a limiting and a clarification and what I will call a protection, a due process protection for the people who are subject to it. And I will compliment the people of Sunnyvale in adopting the charter because ethics is very important to them. And this shows that. Let me briefly go on. I don't want to take too much time. Our other probably most substantive recommendation is to move away from Robert's Rules of Order. It's just kind of too big, too long. I've got a page count here on my most recent one, 669 pages, not counting 48 pages of charts and tables. It's dedicated parliamentarians might know most of these things. I was talking to Town Attorney Dodd before. He says there's maybe 2 or 3 of you that may know everything in here. And I wasn't going to do a test, but as an indication in here, there are, I wonder if any of you know the 5 privileged motions or the 7 subsidiary motions and what their order of preference is and whether they're debatable or not.
I don't want to embarrass anybody else up here, so I'm not going to tell you.
Well, what we've done in this regard is recommend that you take out the reference to the Robert's Rules, this tome. We have provided to the city secretary, and she may have provided it to you. This is 12 pages that has been somewhat tailored to Sunnyvale, just at least Sunnyvale's name's in there. But not that the committee has recommended these specifically. We felt that rules of procedure for the council are very personal to the council, but we wanted to kind of have a difference. And if you know what the rules are, they work so much better. So these rules are just as an example. Maybe there's some value in them, maybe not. That's up to you all, but you all need to look at them. But we felt that from our charge, Robert's Rules are probably too much of a trap, and you could get involved potentially in a lot more parliamentary procedure and a lot less substantive action of the council.
Can I ask a question, sir?
Please.
So, once we have that shorter version of the rules of order, does it need to be approved by council and the boards and commissions? Or only council?
The council can approve it for yourself. You could approve it for other boards and commissions. I think Board of Adjustment, zoning Board of Adjustment may be charged under statute to adopt their own rules. But they're a little different animal too, so their rules would be different. So you can adopt it for council and every board or commission other than zoning Board of Adjustment.
Okay.
And we do have a copy of this. I think I forwarded it to you, Mayor. And the step that we're at right now is we're just looking at the recommendations,
Yeah.
comparing to what we actually do.
Yeah.
So that we can make suggestions if needed.
I
And then
agree.
bring them before all of you.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, we have a little bit time, the way they stated it, unless and until the council or boards and commissions shall adopt a set of rules and procedures, the presiding officer shall determine the most reasonable and orderly way. So there's a time for us to go read it and review it and come to a consensus, right? We have a
Yes,
bit time.
and I would add that even though in the case of the council, Mayor, that would be you when you're present and presiding, it is still subject to approval by the council, and the council could, shall we say, take control of a particular procedural item. I've had the opportunity tonight to watch the procedure of the council, and there seems to be a certain amount of rules that you do follow, but you know, they can almost be stated in one sentence, and that's a good thing, because you know what the committee wanted to do. We want you to continue to focus on substantive issues and not get hung up on procedural issues necessarily. Sometimes you got to do it if there's a conflict among council members and whatnot, but most of the time, we'd like it to be as clear as possible and everybody knows what it is. So that was the second really major change, was Robert's Rules. Oh, did I go too far? We worked with the town manager, as I said, and we really appreciate her coming to our meetings. There was a provision in the old rules that basically said if you were going to talk to staff, you had to go through the town manager. This was probably honored maybe more in the breach, and justifiably so, as Ms. Guthrie brought to our attention. She designates a number of staff members to support boards and commissions, and indeed has her folks even here tonight in their particular areas. So she would like, on normal things, for you all to address the experts who are then under the obligation to come back to her. Now, if something unusual or whatnot, I think she'd still like to be heard or consulted on that, but that's one of the changes that we made. And that said, there were a number of other relatively small things. There was a reference to civil service and not interfering with that, and since there's not a civil service in testing in the town, we changed civil service to personnel. I think it's more of a clarification, less of a substantive change, but you know, that kind of thing. I think I mentioned the conflict of interest and the confidentiality things were moved to, so there's a lot of cross-outs in the document, and they're also appear in the express prohibition, so those weren't really changed. See if there's anything else in my list here. We took out one reference to 3 minutes because they were covered a number of different places as far as the length of time for speakers. There was about a page of descriptions of what various officials did. Those were mostly in the charter. In the interest of streamlining, we actually recommended that those come out. So with that, I think that's about all here. I understand this is on for discussion tonight, not action, but we're here, and I'm so glad the committee members have stayed. I've threatened them that they can answer all the questions. I'll just kind of put the pretty pictures out front. But anything you all have, we would be happy to try to answer.
Again, a general statement to the entire committee. Great job. I read through every change. You all did a really, really great job. So I'm just going to open up this time for the council questions. Are there any questions on their recommendation?
I just want to say thank you also. It's great work, everybody. I do have one question. If certain colleges would have had this document, could they have avoided certain ethical and or moral issues that have been happening recently?
That's not part of the discussion recommendation, so.
Well, not truly an answer to your question, but most of the document was not changed, and there are provisions that limit you from violating state laws, so that might be an answer to your question.
I just want to say, again, as a member of the Ethics
Thank you
Commission.
to you. Just want to thank you yourself.
No, I was not going to thank myself, but I will if you want me to. I want to say that as well as being on the Charter Review, as a member of the Charter Review Committee and this, equal levels of participation by each of the members. We did the same 360 type conversations or discussions, arguments, whatever you want to call them, and we always came to the same conclusion as a group, even though some of us may have had other opinions or other thoughts about the way something would have worked. It was a good working relationship that by the time we reached our conclusion, everybody was on board. And I commend Charles for that. I also commend the committee members, David, yourself along with that, to work hard to get this done. And I'm sure some of y'all know one night in particular when I was running back and forth between, I think it was it might have been 3 different meetings that were going on because council had something going on in the back and they had something going on in the front and there was something else going somewhere else. It made it fun, but it made it a great opportunity to see, to put the rules in place, I guess, if you will. And I hate to call them rules because you would think that by, if everybody did things the way they needed to be done, we probably wouldn't need ethics. But there's always got to be a benchmark to lay it up against so that we can just make, everybody knows where first base is and not to run to third to get to home.
Additional comments?
Thank you all for a lot of work. It's very difficult documentation to strike and rewrite. Thank you very much.
I just want to give the opportunity for any members of the Ethics Commission. Do you all want to add anything to what Mr. Anderson said?
I'd like to just add one thing. As Charles noted, these documents are never perfect when we finish our work as a committee. I mean, the Town Comprehensive Plan is very important and significant, but it's an ongoing work. The UDO, we passed it and adopted, recognizing that we needed to do additional work. The Town Charter, the ethics, this ethics document, in each case, we've done what we could within the allotted time, but we've also noted additional effort or actions that need to be taken or considered by a future committee or next time the Town Charter Committee is chartered, next time this committee is chartered, whatever else. We want to make really sure, I would like to make really sure, that these items that we're recommending for further consideration are documented and noted and in the town's history so that there is continual follow-up and it's not lost.
because the work is not done. We did what we could within the time that was allocated to us. Thank you.
Good point, Mr. Powell. Thank you. So, Ms. Guthrie, let me ask you. So, tonight, I mean, didn't see too many discussion from the council members, so we could adopt this one, correct?
Actually, the agenda does not call for adoption, it just
Okay.
calls for discussion. So my suggestion is if you do feel like, hey, we're good to go, we'll bring it back at the next meeting on the consent agenda.
Okay.
And that way we, can move forward quickly.
So what about the other one, the rules and order?
And that document, we have that. I will share that with everyone, but we did think that staff should review it so that we could know, really what is current protocol. We're assuming that you want to keep as much of that as possible. So we're going to review that, give you some suggestions, and give that back to you. And so maybe we'll have both of those on the next agenda if we can move that quickly.
Okay.
Sound good?
Does that sound good to everybody? Thank you once again, Mr. Anderson.
Our privilege.
Thanks, Commission. Appreciate you all. Thanks.
Thank you.
Moving on to the town manager portion of the agenda, that's item number 10. As we discussed, that item is pulled because staff is still waiting for additional information from the other parties. Moving on to the mayor and council portion of the agenda, that's 11. Response to the prior meeting request from council. I'm going to turn that out to Ms. Guthrie.
Just to close the loop on this, on the recycling item, we did send something out to you all that we got from public that really did say, yes, you really do need to wash your dirty recyclables if we're going to be able to recycle them. We also followed up on the wood chipper, and there were several actions we did on that. We got a quote to purchase one, number one. Number two, we contacted our TML, our insurance, to make sure we wouldn't have any kind of issue with adding that. We've done that, and then we've also been in contact with Republic Services because there may be some way to partner with them, and we have a meeting set up with them next week on that. The third item, the bandit signs, just really had to get a little creative on this because they're mostly put out over the weekend, and the department that typically would respond to that only works one weekend per month. So what they did was they cross-trained the Parks Department, who does right-of-way mowing on the weekend. So they've cross-trained them to be able to recognize what's illegal and to gather those up. And a pilot of that started this weekend. So we should be able to see a difference. So I want to thank the Parks Department. They are always kind of asked to do the and/or, kind of thing, all other duties as assigned. So thank you to them.
Any questions for staff?
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ms. Guthrie. Moving on to item number 12, that's the mayor and council request for future staff updates and agenda items. Are there any requests? If not, I'm going to quickly move to the next section, which is the executive session. Can I have a motion to recess into executive session pursuant to Chapter 551, Subchapter D of the Texas Government Code? Council, we have 4 items for discussion. Project PIG, Project Tenant, Project Landscape, and Project PC. Can I have a motion, please? Motion made by Mr.
Second.
Egan to recess into executive session, and seconded by Mr. Clark. Everyone heard the motion? All in favor signify. All opposed, motion passed 6-0. Now, council, our time is 9:18. We are in executive session. Thank you.
Yeah. It's kind of entertaining.
You know, as a long-time staff member, I've come to really appreciate being placed way down on the agenda, because you guys are usually one down. So, it was really the Prevo place. So. But, really not even a question. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And it was a great thing.
Oh, you know, so what? Even when I was on there, there was a lot of stuff up on me. Coming all the way up. You ready?
Things ready? Hey, thank you very much. I appreciate it. And that softball question too. Yes, sir. How's,
Might help if he was like. You guys are really good friends, aren't you? Don't even know where the friends live. What is it? 112.
One of those things you don't retain anymore, they just go in. Well, it's like the computer or something, it's so much, you gotta put something beside, you gotta dump something. Right. And then you still lose weeks, I guess. That's what that did in my memory, I'm using the weeks like yours. He's doing good, he's feeling a lot better. I'm sure, she's sick again this weekend, she's not sure she's passed it, so. She was gonna try to go back to the doctor. Yeah. She was always there. Oh, she got married, so, and then he got sick. He's okay. So we can also, yeah. Yeah, so that, she gets really, really nasty, and I didn't realize all the fright. Very frightful, right? After the weather, I kept noticing all of the Italian chiefs and captains and lieutenants that were making trips to the Lake Point to see him, yeah. And I was like, that's weird. Well, it was the Lake Point. Yeah, but they were, she was at Baylor. Well, but it wasn't that. No, they required to work out when he had switched to a different station and these guys were really, really working out. And he hadn't been, and so he overdid it and he wasn't hydrating properly. And he got rhabdomyolysis and it shut his kidneys down. And, which again caused complete renal failure. Yeah, it did, it does. And they actually, he told me after he got back to work, I'd forgotten, but one of the chiefs reminded me that they actually had a guy during training for the fire department. Yeah.
running out of